My name is Bjarke Petersen, and our company, Odysse, is a participation agency. And you're probably wondering what that is. And we did the same for quite some time, but we do participatory events and experiences. So any type of event or experience where people have to participate and co-create. So we've done everything from large-scale TV series with in 8 countries in Europe and 100,000 people playing online. We've done launch of Theatre of Shadows. It's a 250-person immersive event for the end of the Skullduggery Pleasant book series together with HarperCollins. Or we have done educational games for museums that handles Cold War issues and trying to teach children how it was to live during the Cold War and the fear of nuclear annihilation every day. That's something that's very hard to teach in a classroom, but is ideal when you're participating and you experience it. We're here to talk about Nordic LARP for social change. How many in here knows what LARP is? Quite a bit. It's cool. Live action role play, or LARP. It's an abbreviation, of course, but we use it as a word now. It's just like laser. You don't spell it out anymore. So I'm a LARPer, I LARP, it's a LARP. LARP has a pretty bad reputation. It's often seen as silly. It's people in bad fantasy costumes trying to escape their mundane lives. And that's me on the right, by the way. There's nothing wrong with a little escapism. It can be amazingly fun. But LARP is so much more, and we would like to talk about the specific subset of LARPs that has been branded as Nordic LARP. Nordic LARP originated in the Nordic countries, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Iceland in the late 90s, and we wanted to explore more complex and serious themes than just the fight for good and evil. We wanted to tell profound stories and engaging stories for all types of audiences. Stories that by participating in them, you'll become part of them, and through this, you'll get an emotional connection that would be stronger than what you would get from any other medium. There's so much to learn from being somebody else for a few days. And the LARPs that we do now has evolved quite a bit from the bad costumes and fighting in a parking lot in the 90s. This, for example, is College of Wizardry. It ran 2 weeks ago. It's a Harry Potter LARP set in a Polish castle. And the participants, of course, were at this college and learned magic, just like in the Potter universe. But even though it seems like a light and an easy thing, many themes in the books are about racism, alienation, oppression, and fascism. On a more heavier note, this LARP called Just a Little Lovin' tackles themes from that concerns the AIDS and HIV crisis in the early 80s here in New York. It's made by HIV activists that wanted to inform the participants and the world about an almost forgotten part of our history. A French participant who also during the 80s was a dancer for Madonna and lived through the AIDS and HIV crisis here in New York, he contacted the organizers afterwards, and while crying, he told them that this was the most beautiful homage to a very difficult part of his life. This does not sound as a lot of fun, does it? But as any human story, there was both joy and tragedy, happiness and mourning. You don't do this to be entertained and have fun. You do this to be moved and learn new things about the world. But what is needed to get people to participate in strong and difficult experiences like this? We have dissected this, and we have like 2 main elements that is needed for these things to work. The first is that you need to establish a magic circle. A magic circle is a physical space where we agree that other rules apply than those rules that are in the real world. It's a space where we can change almost anything to fit what we want to convey. good example is, of course, theater. We all agree that during the play, the actors are not actors. In this, they are part of the royal court of Shakespeare's play, Richard III. Or in a boxing ring, also a great magic circle. In the ring, you are praised to hit another person in the face as hard as you can. If you do the same in the parking lot, you will be arrested. Different rules apply. The second thing you need to be able to participate is alibi. Alibi is what you need to dare to step into the magic circle. You need to trust your fellow participants that they will not ridicule you for your actions. Alibi is not something that you only need when you're LARPing. It's something you need in any and every type of experience and event where you want people to participate. A good example of an alibi is, of course, a mask. We've all been to a masked ball, I think, and we behave a little bit different than our ordinary selves because of this. The mask gives you alibi to act differently. We've done events where we wanted people to dance, and I think we all have been in the situation where we did not feel that we have enough alibi to step onto the dance floor. People would ridicule me for my stupid, I can't dance and all that. I think we've all been there. So what we have done, for example, is that we hire people to dance. Then you're not the first on the floor and there's somebody out there already. That makes your alibi stronger. Of course, you should never hire a guy like John Travolta. That's way too awe-inspiring. You want to hire a guy like this one. And as the Korean artist Psy has said, dress classy, dance cheesy. That's exactly the people that you want. Somebody that's danced like it looks like an aerobics class from the 80s, then I would step into the dance floor as well and have a lot of alibi. Then I'm not the one that looks the most foolish on the floor. So when you combine the two, then you want to take people from their comfort zone, give them a magic circle that they can step into by themselves via the alibi that you have given them. And you cannot push them in there. They need to go there themselves. And that is when the LARP magic happens. When you're at a LARP, there is no audience, or there's an audience of one, yourself. You are the main character in your own story. And that is true for everybody else participating. LARPs can only be experienced from the inside. It is simply impossible to be a passive audience. You're experiencing the story in your own physical body with all your senses and your emotional responses. And we as human beings are extremely bad at telling the difference between fiction and reality. That is why, for example, laughter therapy works. If you fake an emotion for a period of time, the brain starts to produce the same signals as if you were having that emotion for real. For example, if you go to a horror movie, then something scary happens on screen, then you scream out loud, and right after that you laugh. And what is happening there is that in the situation, your brain cannot tell the difference between reality and the fiction on the screen. But right afterwards, we are very good at taking that experience and then put it into the fiction memory part of your brain. So then you label it as fiction, and then you laugh that you had that strong emotional response. Now imagine dressing up as a character together with hundreds of other people. And when you interact with them, they confirm that you are the character you're portraying. And this goes on for days. You will create strong relations to other fictional characters, and they will feel real. And this will be a strong and meaningful experience for everybody. This is Al-Rashidiyah refugee camp in Lebanon. There's 40,000 people living there, and 50% of those people are under 25. A Norwegian NGO that works with LARP called Fantasiforbundet, they work primarily in countries of oppression. They work in Palestine, they work in Lebanon, they work in Syria, and they work in the Belarus. When they came to the camp and asked what the children were playing there, the only answer they got from the people they asked was that they played military and freedom fighters. And this is a pretty sad thing for a 6-year-old to play. So together with the children, they made up a LARP called The Wolf. The Wolf is a story about a flock of chickens and a herd of sheep that wanted to stop the evil wolf from taking them, and they needed to work together for this to happen. This is some of the chickens. They, of course, only had to work with the stuff that was already in the refugee camp, and they had to show the kids how to do this and learn them the skill sets. So they worked together with a local community center so they could set up their own LARPs afterwards and give them the tools to build their own worlds. Worlds that were more playful and engaging and fun than the everyday life of the refugee camp. This is one of the sheep. The Wolf LARP was a great success, and the children in the refugee camp are still making LARPs and creating worlds that are engaging and gives them hope for the future. But what can we do? We who live in a privileged world and are shielded from oppression, fear, and war. My colleague Cecilia Dolk will tell you about it in how to engage with these topics.
Every day we consume news about what happens around the world. But what if we take these serious topics and place them in a fictional universe, a civilization adrift in space, pursued by robots, synthetic humans of its own making? Then suddenly it becomes fascinating and compelling entertainment. And what if we take it one step further, create a place where people can react, feel, and be a part of what's happening in their own physical bodies? Suicide bombing and terrorism. A government co-opted to act as a puppet regime for the occupying army. Civilians recruited to serve on behalf of the occupiers, to hunt down the terrorists and saboteurs. Resistance fighters striking back and recruiting suicide bombers to kill their fellow citizens as a punishment for collaboration. And what about unions and worker rights? The separation of church and state? The underground economy? Police violence and genocide? These serious themes are all portrayed in the remarkable TV show Battlestar Galactica, and something you as a participant lived and experienced with your own physical body at our event, the Monitor Celestra. Imagine yourself standing in a front of a Cold War destroyer about to take part of the event Celestra. You're a bit nervous. You have seen a lot of episodes from the TV show, and you feel really prepared to play your character. You have a few hours earlier said hello to the other 140 participants that are going to portray your crewmates and your enemies. While you're on board, the dim lights, it changes. You start to hear the theme music that indicates that the game is on. For the first hour, you feel a bit insecure, and you're trying to find yourself in this new world. But suddenly, as Marines from the Battlestar Galactica storms your home, your ship, you find yourself standing up saying, "This is a civilian ship. We will not obey to your military authority." One by one, your crewmates stands beside you, defending your civilian right. You have stopped acting. You are immersed in this new world. You have become your character.
They are not considered an immediate threat, and they are preparing a delegation to come on board the Celestra to discuss what they call our common future. As one of the Virgin's executives has been vetted out in the airlock.
And the Colonial Marines are only here to supervise and support the Celestra crew in running the ship.
So from this moment, I declare martial law by the power invested in me by the military and the civil law.
Look, you're not taking away the power from my people. Look.
As power, stop the attempt to do a blind jump, but it will cut power and everything else as well.
We have jumped successfully, people.
Just take it easy. Just take it easy. Okay, I want to go up there.
And do it.
But I need help. Okay.
Do it. You take him, Marie. You take him to the bridge.
Take him there, but just explain to me first. What are our options here?
Our options are we need to take down the AI before it intervenes all
Okay.
systems.
If you get me up there, I can fix this. Okay.
What you've seen is the reported team who entered the vessel as civilians, capturing what's actually happening during the event. Their clothes, their homes, cars, technology, food, and interior decoration are all familiar to us. Battlestar Galactica has constantly challenged the TV audience to question what it means to be human, to reflect on how easy it is to dehumanize others in time of war, and to understand how war itself dehumanizes us. The TV show gained this impressive reputation for its refusal to moralize or instruct the audience on how we feel about these issues. It is a timeless exploration of problem in our society. The reimagined version of Battlestar Galactica was about the post-9/11 America, being able to let the audience get another perspective than the mainstream media. Our event was about the rise of fascist political movements, issues of immigration, cultural intolerance resonating in Europe right now. Making people being able for a couple of days to step into a role of the oppressor or the oppressed and gain new perspective on these difficult issues. The deeply flawed and troubled crew of the Battlestar Galactica and the Monitor Celestra must face morally complex universe and make their own choices, just like we do every day. I still have players coming up to me to tell their story, to share what they felt during the event 2 years after. One of them, she told me she has really severe claustrophobia. She can't be in a room without an open window or an open door. But still, she can find herself be immersed inside this spaceship, 100% still, no windows, not being able to see the sky for a couple of hours. But the ones that have touched me most is when a guy came up to me and told me a story about him and his grandmother. His grandmother fled to survive during the Second World War. For the first time, he could, as being a civilian at the Monitor Celestra, how she must have felt, how it must have been for her. So he shared his story with his grandmother, and they connected on a deep and emotional level. Two different stories, two different worlds, but with an understanding. By doing events like this, people change and get perspective. All of this has happened before and will happen again. Would any one of you like to be participating in a game like this? Yeah! Amazing! I can just tell you that we are actually looking for a new place here in the US to turn on the engines again on the Monitor Celestra and welcome a new crew on her. Hopefully that includes some of you guys. We hope this will happen. We don't know when, but I will turn over to my colleague Martin Eriksson, who will now tell you a story about the game we know will happen again. Thank you.
They are not.
Allow me to cordially introduce you to Elsinore Castle, Denmark. Yes, the actual castle, the setting for Shakespeare's Hamlet. And one of the most longest running live-action role-playing games in the European countries, Inside Hamlet. In the roughly 416 years since the play, Hamlet has been used as an exploration of massively different human issues. It's a story that lends itself to interpretation. We've seen it used as a Marxist parable of power. We've seen it used as talking about the bourgeoisie family. In our adaptation, made for 100 players during 3 days and 3 acts, which shows a burlesque 1930s where the decadent court of Claudius is under siege from a popular revolution, shouting in the streets outside. It's the last days of tyranny, and you are the tyrant, or a part of or a collaborator with a tyrannical regime. Inside Hamlet began as a commission from the Swedish National Theatre in 1999. Then we played Elsinore in an inflatable castle, which was see-through and with projection from the outside, and toured 4 different Swedish cities. In 2002, we did it again in a 72-hour version in a fire truck garage under a park in Stockholm. It's putting down the main pillars for what became the ultimate performance of this version just a few short months ago, or even like 1 month ago, right?
1.5, sort of.
Yeah. When we had the amazing opportunity to stage this at Elsinore Castle itself. Inside Hamlet consists of 3 acts, where we take the 5-act structure of the play and boil it down to 3 acts: decadence, deception, and death. Anything that happens on the floor, anything that happens is driven by the participants. We are completely without control. The framework of the story, sure, it is there. Hamlet will make his fatal stab through the arras, and he will face his exile to England. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern will betray him, and in the end it will end in blood, as we all know. But around that, the court have their own personal stories. To give the participants the freedom and alibi and ability to play this out to the hilt, especially for concerning the first act. We have chosen a rule set, and have always chosen a rule set for this, that says what happens in Elsinore stays in Elsinore. So we'll not hear any detailed stories, but please allow your imagination to run free. We use a simple set of intensity regulating rules to allow everybody to keep their integrity. If you use the word rotten, it means step it up, go for it, kiss me, or slap me in the face, or punch me in the stomach, or whatever. And if you would say pure in a sentence, it means step back. This gives amazing control over your own experience and the possibility to go absolutely bananas and feel safe about it. Our participants have given us great feedback on this, and it seems to work almost flawlessly. So the first act is a decadent, if the first act is a decadent party, the second one is the struggle for the throne, where it becomes increasingly apparent that Claudius is losing grip. The different great houses of Denmark compete, plot, and deceive each other. Old lovers become enemies. And of course, it all ends in a tide of revenge, misunderstandings, vendettas, duels, poisons, all lethal. In the end, when Fortinbrau's revolutionaries storm the gates and enter the throne room, probably only a handful will have survived the machinations of the fall of tyranny. But there, in that moment, you decide, does my character deserve to live? Are there people so rotten, oppressors so horrible, that they deserve to be subjected to the fate that they are in that moment, lined up against the wall by revolutionaries and shot down? The cast of Inside Hamlet is, of course, about 4 times bigger than the original cast of 23 characters. The royals are there, and they are well-read Shakespeare actors who are sometimes even able to take their, all of the lines out into improvised play. We sometimes stop the play by using a stage light to make room for the soliloquies. But most importantly, around the signpost of drama is the 100-player court, who all have characters defined by to-bes and not to-bes, creative and destructive or disruptive actions separated into two parts. And the meaning is to alternate between them, not make up your minds, hesitate horribly, and pay the price for it. It's a timeless story about power, desire, and tragic hesitation. We hope to be able to run this from now on yearly, starting in 2016. We have great contacts with the castle. Last time we had was like 8 or 10 Americans flying over. Yeah. So you're more than welcome to come over and experience Hamlet from the inside. But what else does the undiscovered country of the future hold? Let's check over to Björk again, and he can probably tell us. Thanks.
LARP is moving very fast, from obscure subculture to the mainstream. People want to participate and co-create. They want to be the main character in their own story. They want to live the life of somebody else and to have profound experiences together with other people. We see this in all aspects of consumer culture, from participatory theater like Punch Drunk Sleep No More to cosplay, and
yeah, I mean, to me, a picture like this, like all dressed up, nowhere to go. These guys don't want to dress up to be Mandalorian mercenaries just to be photographed. They want to be there and raid some rebel base right now. We can make that happen for them. Come on. It's like, it's ridiculous.
That's true, Martin.
Yeah.
Just give you a venue, we can start
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah. So as Martin coined at one point, LARP is the extreme sports of the imagination. So it is not dangerous, but it is exciting. And LARP is happening...
Little bit dangerous.
Yeah. That's a long discussion. So LARP is happening in places unexpected. This summer, Disney ran Legends of Frontierland. It is a LARP about deputies and poker-playing villains and greedy gold diggers and power-hungry businessmen. And this was in Disneyland in LA. And you could participate for a few hours when you're visiting the park, or you could come back every day for 3 months and participate every day.
It's no surprise that Nordic LARP organizers have been sort of in the consultancy sphere around this, but yeah.
So more and more IP holders and brand holders are realizing that they need to open up and let the fans engage and co-create the content within those IPs. And this creates a so much stronger connection to that brand or IP than any marketing campaign can ever do. When people co-create, they feel ownership and they get so much more emotional out of it. So who would, of course, not love to be on the bridge of the ISS Enterprise and say, engage? I would love that. Or be present at the Red Wedding and see if you could survive. I would also do that. Or escape the zombie horde together with Rick Grimes in The Walking Dead. I'm not sure I want to do that. To step into these worlds or any other world that works with allegorical with heavy themes will make you understand the themes on an emotional and experiential level. It will show you their complex nature and change you in a way no digital game can. Thank you.